So, yeah, my name is Cherie and welcome to my journey. So, one of the things that I wanted to say that it seems like I keep getting cut off, right? My father, on one hand, did the most, right? Like I said, he was a vet, he was a businessman, he was a militant with the Black Panthers, he was a pimp. Yeah, he was he had his own little business school of beauty, you know. And like I said, on the surface, all of that looked like he was, making a difference in the world, right? And yet, behind the scenes, my father did drugs, my father sold drugs, my father was involved in um sex trafficking, like all of his beauticians, they also were prostitutes, right? He was selling guns to who knows who, right? And even sold guns to the Black Panthers. So yeah, he had so many irons in the fire, right? But like I said, on paper, he looked, pretty good, right? He worked he worked as a professional. He worked as a government agent, you know. But like I said, he was able to also do the worst, right? To also be one of the worst criminals and the most amoral people on the planet, right? So this is one of the reasons why we can't sit up here and just accept the fact that somebody does something, for their career and not, take into consideration, their moral characteristics. Okay? And, he wasn't the only one. My daughter's boyfriend, right? She was with him, I think, for like 15 years. And on paper, he looked good, right? He had longevity with his federal job. He also was an artist, so he did, entrepreneur things, especially, involving drawing or art, and, his own little tattoo parlor, Then, he also received the older house that his mother used to have, and then his mother went and moved to another house and gave him the house, because he was like the only son, actually the only child. And yeah, so just that alone, it sounds like, wow, that's pretty good, right? Never had a criminal record. But then my daughter told me later on that she couldn't be with him. And I'm like, what's wrong? He looks like he's doing, good. What's going on? Not only would he not marry her, but, they ended up having a child, and anyway, something else happened. And I was like, what else happened? And she told me that this guy was involved in the sex industry. And I'm like, what? How? And he said, well, he had a little black bag full of, sex toys. And he would be gone, using whatever he had in his bag with the people that he was dealing with. And she believes that, he was getting money for that. And I was like, what? And that was one of the reasons why she never wanted him to touch her anymore after that. Because, I don't blame her, right? Biocontamination galore, right? So, and by the way, let me tell you, they were both Pisces men, right? So even though he was a Pisces man, him, just like my father, also, did the most, right? He was able to be a single parent, right, with my granddaughter. My father was able to be one of the first single parents out there by being my father, my, full custody father, right? And yes, it could have been, it could have went a lot worse in a lot of other people's minds, because a lot of people, once they found out, the background of this, you start to wonder, well, how is it that, they're involved in sex trafficking, and yet, the children are somewhat protected. Somewhat, maybe, I don't know. We have to let history determine that. We have to let history determine that. I know, as far as myself is concerned, yeah, it has affected the way that I see relationships. Okay? It definitely, makes me wonder, right? And then the fact that, he decided to have, children with, other women besides my mom, I have, to think about, how I feel about those siblings, and how, there's so much age between us that I really don't feel like it's really relevant, because, they're either my oldest daughter's age or younger, okay? We have nothing in common anyway. So, I know I was telling my daughter about that. I said, I have a brother over there in Hawaii, who tried to impose, a big sister role on me. And I'm like, dude, I only met you twice. I don't even know who you are. Now, your mom, I know her and I have love for her. But I don't know this dude coming around here talking about, he came to Texas and went out of his way to meet me, and next time it's my turn. I'm like, listen, boy, you ain't telling me nothing. Right? He wanted to say something like, well, I need to fly over there to Hawaii to see him. And I'm like, listen, do you have a place that you can offer me to stay at if I show up there? Because over there is from what I hear, everything is expensive. It's a tourist trap up there. And they got so many people going through there. Even if you do get a good price, are you gonna get clean bed sheets and blankets and all of that stuff? Nah, I cannot. That's why even when I used to travel a long time ago, before, motels and hotels started becoming people's second home, and it was actually, a place to stay while traveling, you could almost depend on, at least some clean sheets and bedding. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying, I think definitely my upbringing, affected, the way that I see relationships, right? And, having half brothers and sisters, it definitely affects the way that I see family. Would it be a lot simpler if, there was just one mother, one father, and on and on and on, instead of, this extended family situation is ridiculous. And yet we accept it as if that's life. And now that we have accepted it, it's so prevalent that, we don't even know what to hold on to. Right? We start believing that, our coworkers are more family than our family is. Stuff like that. Exactly.